Okay, we can start.
1, 2, 3, 4. Ready?
Yes.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to yet another show of Big Talk with Slender Boy. It's been a minute. We are back at it again. It's nice to be with you. We're going to have a very, very interesting conversation. Remember the last time, or if you go on to our profile, you'll check there that the aim of the podcast is to educate, inform, and also to provoke your thought. So today, I think we've got someone who will be able to provoke your thought, educate you, and hopefully inform you. He's an investor. He's into books. Because earlier on, we're preparing maybe to refer to him as a bookworm. It's like, no, not a bookworm. But he's into books. He reads a lot. And then he's a minimalist. Quite interesting. His name is Ndu. My brother, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Slender Boy.
Thank you very much for coming through. It's an honor. And I hope we are going to learn a lot from you. And then hopefully you'll also provoke our thoughts. You know, mostly sometimes when you have people, it's a new thing that I'm adopting. I want them to introduce themselves because so that I don't omit anything that is very important, or maybe they would feel about it. No, but I think you could have included 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. But one thing, since I've known you, I know you are into investment, you are a minimalist, and also you read a lot of books, and there are other things. On that note, maybe you can just a brief profile of yourself before we can just get on with our conversation.
Sure. So, first thing I'd like to sort of...
It's like tell us about yourself in an interview. And you scratch your head. Yes, let's go, Toma guy.
I'm handsome, I'm dead gorgeous, very intelligent guy. No. But on a realistic note, the first thing I'd like to, express is what informs my worldview is I see myself first and foremost as a Christian, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that is, I think, the source of everything. And then next, I'd say, I did a couple of jobs. So my first job was as a management consultant for a small boutique consulting firm called Navigant, and we did a couple of projects in the public sector and sort of working around issues of strategy, finance, and improving efficiency in that regard. And then for a couple of years after that, I taught, in a primary school. It was a very interesting experience, given that my background, I'd been in Model C schools, so that was the first.
Well, you can tell.
That was the first introduction to internship in school, but it was a phenomenal experience, very enriching, and so that opened my eyes to several things. And currently, I'm in politics, so I'm a councillor in Ketling River. And that's a very interesting job to do at the moment. I mean, with my background, one always felt like, I studied political science, by the way. So I studied political science. I then went on to do a bit of finance also. So with that whole background, I always thought that getting into politics, I would have an impact in terms of helping, in terms of governance and again,
are you sure you are not just trying to be an opportunist?
No. If I was, I would have taken advantage of opportunities that avail themselves. I did not, and I haven't. But I found it very frustrating, I must say, because it's one thing when it's very obvious what needs to be done and it's not being done, and you see how it's affecting governance and service delivery and so forth. But I mean, this is still early days. It's, I think, only my second year since the elections were in the 2021. So hopefully somehow we can still make changes going forth. But yes, as you said, I'm an avid reader, although I don't think of myself as a bookworm. But I also, I'm very interested in investing. I love investing and thinking about different forms of how one can structure their portfolio going forward.
Quite interesting. By the way, ladies and gentlemen, welcome once more to Big Talk with Slatterboy. This episode is brought to you by Gyroscope TV. You spoke about politics, and this comes at a time whereby our country finds itself in a situation that is a bit dire, and you are into politics. Maybe just a brief overview of your take into how the politics of this country. Just give us a brief state of the politics of this country as a politician yourself. Are you happy? And do you think we are headed the right direction? Obviously not. What could be the solution to that? Maybe just a brief overview, rather.
Sure. So I want to structure that answer in two formats, right? So let's look at the domestic context, and then we'll look at the foreign policy context. So domestically, as I've alluded, now I mean I'm on the lowest tier or first tier of governance because it's local. So that's the first tier of governance in which people interact with. And I've said, as I've said, some of the things that we need to deal with are really what we can call.
Is this on local
sphere?
Local sphere, okay.
So I'm on a local sphere, but I think it's endemic. The challenges that I'm facing at a local sphere are endemic of what's happening throughout the system.
Probably globally.
Yeah, well, I want to focus on our country specifically, and hence I said I want to start with the domestic kind of element first. And so, like I said, there's issues that are what we could call low-hanging fruit, like issues around unauthorized expenditure, wasteful expenditure, irregular expenditure, all these things are things that can be dealt with. Right, it's not very difficult dealing with these things.
But year in, year out, when it's time for budget allocations, you hear same utterances.
Yes, it's always going up and high. And
do you think it's deliberate, maybe?
It's deliberate, and so it's deliberate. It's because there isn't any what they like to call in political circles consequence management, right? So there is no consequences for doing things, but. Again, I would say it goes back to the electorate. Politics is about competition, and so unfortunately in South Africa we mired in identity politics. So I vote, or
based
people
on the
vote,
color of the skin.
Yes, color of the skin, and or in maybe some instances even tribalism, right? And so that dilutes the competitive nature of politics, and I would, even though as a politician, it probably is a bit ironic in me saying this, but I don't believe that politicians deliver purely because of some fealty or love for the country. But it's about a genuine threat of saying, if I don't deliver, I will be voted out. Right now, if you see other countries across the world, both some developing countries and developed countries, this system that allows where people know that if we don't deliver, we're going to be voted out, does actually lead to an improvement of governance. It might not necessarily be perfect, but it's surely much better than what you get in what we call a dominant political party system, which is what South Africa is. If you're having the same party for over now 2 going to 3, 4 decades or whatever, it becomes what we call in political circles a dominant party system. So definitely there are things that are very easy to fix, like I said, around cost controls that we can deal with. There's also issues about regulation. For instance, one of my biggest frustrations with unions is you'll have unions say, look, one of the most common examples is a person will say, no, my worker is earning X, but the CEO is earning 1 million times more. What that
Manuel
mine
is,
worker
is earning 8,500
Yes.
and
Yes.
CEO is earning 1 million a month or something.
yeah, more than millions, whatever.
Because it's something that happened. I mean, about I think it was when was the Marikana massacre? About 8 years ago, 10.
Yes.
How many years?
I'm
Yeah, I
forgetting.
think it is around 2016.
2016. Yeah, but it was
Yes.
almost the same scenario. Yeah.
Exactly. So my argument around that.
Probably a decade.
Not even 16, man. 2014.
2014.
Yeah, 14.
2014.
Well, I remember the president was deputy president at the time, around the time. So, but I'm forgetting the date. But my issue around that is that the way this is framed is probably not the correct way of framing the question. Yes, you might argue there's injustice because of the huge sort of gap of wages there. But my argument is that employee, if we look at it in the global context, is not competing against the CEO. He or she is competing against another employee that's doing similar work in China or in another developing country, right? And that's where the competition is. It's not between someone at a lower tier and a higher tier. And so, as unions, I think the question would be saying, how do we start empowering laborers to be able to do work? Maybe what unions ought to be fighting for is how do you empower laborers to do work higher up the value chain in order so that within the global context, what they do is more valuable and they can get paid more. And that's how you, instead of comparing, because I feel like that's comparing apples and bananas and not apples and apples.
I get your point. Maybe the issue is how much of resources or the working environment that we are putting in profit or the resources that we are extracting and they creating a lot of money. Maybe it's in that context to say if I'm able to extract this much, why can't I be able to be paid or remunerated based on that we extract this much, and it creates a lot of income for the country and also for these organizations that are in control of this mining and businesses, if maybe I may put it like that, for lack of a better way.
No, true. But what I'm saying is the thing is that even if you frame it like that, you got to look at within a larger global context. It says, let's say now government, overnight makes a legislation that I don't know what 30-40% of whatever let's say 50-50 thing, for argument's sake.
Like
50% is extracted.
What they're doing in Botswana.
There is, and we can speak about that, about what I think,
I think continental also in Venezuela, if I'm not mistaken.
But okay, so it's brilliant that you mentioned Venezuela. So let's look at what happened in Venezuela. They did it with oil, right? But what happened? What was the result of that?
I'm not informed about it, but I'm just saying in terms of trade relations and also agreements in terms of doing business in a particular country.
So that's a brilliant example that you made, Venezuela, and I completely forgot about it. Now, there was a time, I think it was in around 2010 or 2012. Yeah, but I'm forgetting exactly the period, right? But oil was high, right? So, and Venezuela's oil. But because of those legislations that Chavez had pushed through in order to get more extraction, guess what happened? Multinationals left, and they didn't have the resources to get the oil up. And at that time, even with oil prices as high as they were, inflation in Venezuela was ridiculous.
That's a very good point, because it's like when we are arguing that we want to benefit from these mining companies and stuff, but one would come and say, but if these companies they just decide to throw everything on the ground, it's like do it yourself, we are going to have a big problem.
Yes. So, and my suggestion around that, and I mean, I'm talking at a very theoretical level here, is perhaps we should think about saying, why don't you have collective groupings?
It was with regard to the unions, because you made mention with regard to the unions, the problem that you're having with regard to.
Yes. So back to the unions, and I want to get back to the issue of what you were saying with Botswana and the 50% diamond story. But with the unions, what I was saying is that, so let's say you say unilaterally, you just say 50% extraction. The problem is, if I'm a shareholder of that company, I'm going to say, but if I can get a better return in another country, why am I still putting money in this country, right? Because as a shareholder, I want returns, right? And so what happens is, so I go, well, no, we don't want to do this, and then you sell out, pull out your...
But maybe because we started off with politics, maybe you can just reflect on how politics maybe can easily be placed to manage or standardize so that everyone gets to benefit in this whole thing.
Sure. So it can,
because we're trying to get to a point whereby you, with a background of politics, how politics can be used for the betterment of the country and the political situation of this country.
Sure. So remember, actually, we were talking about domestic. I didn't get to the foreign part, but to answer what you're saying now, I was saying, with regards to the issue of saying Botswana, for instance, that what you would want to have done, and I'm not sure if they got the 50% deal. I know there was
but I think it's 60-40 or something like that.
There was discussion
something along those lines.
So I don't know if they got it through. But I was saying that the idea around that would have been saying, if you had to say, okay, countries that export. So think of what happens with the oil cartel, OPEC, right? So something similar like that. Can you get countries that export, let's say, diamonds on the African continent, and they have an economic group, and then they say, look, for anybody to extract from us, you have to do what Botswana says, 50%. Now they have weight. It's not just Botswana, little Botswana in its own thing that's making this rule. It's a collective of the African continent, wherever diamonds are being produced, they're making that rule. So now suddenly for instance, let's say, and I don't know what is the value in Botswana, but let's say Botswana has something like 3 billion of diamonds, for example. Suddenly it's not 3 billion. Suddenly you're having a 20 or 40 billion rand industry that's saying, no, the only terms and conditions of you extracting diamonds from us is if you leave 50%. Then now there's a bigger weight of sort of negotiation, weight in that sense. But then those countries in the African continent would have to compete amongst each other on maybe governance models. But at least you have a floor ceiling in saying you can't go below this in terms of what the governments are able to extract.
African countries governing themselves.
Yes, so I've made an example with diamonds, but any other minerals, if you have countries that produce a mineral X, get themselves in a group and then say, these are the conditions in which...
And I think maybe we should have been there already. I'm just thinking.
Yeah, it's challenging because it doesn't happen overnight, right? So there has to be also a certain degree of a sacrifice, because remember, it's not going to happen overnight. You would have a back and forth between the companies and the countries, and so you might have maybe even the parent companies of those parent countries of those companies trying to come in order to sway African governments. So it would be a tug war. It definitely wouldn't be easy, but you need that level of sacrifice. But I'm oversimplifying things.
I think with politics we can spend the whole day, because before we started we spoke about the BRICS, what you call it. But I think maybe let's pack it, because you'll be a regular on this podcast. So
the idea there was that if you look at the BRICS countries, there's 4 countries within BRICS. South Africa is the smallest one, and let me start
in terms of
size.
okay.
Size. We are half of the second smallest nation within BRICS. Now, if you look at the drivers of FDI and trade, we've got it's resource seeking, efficiency seeking, market seeking, and what did I say? Resource efficiency, market, and low cost labor.
Okay.
Now, all these, the biggest driver of all these of this is the population, right? So my argument in that was that because all these the three other countries have a higher population than ours, their threshold for meeting these drivers is much lower than South Africa's. So does it really make sense to think that within this BRICS context, you can get a better deal in terms of changing international trade rules, in meeting South Africa's needs, and I don't believe that. One of the big things that's come out now is the whole thing about the BRICS currency, and people have felt that this is going to be the countervailing currency against the dollar or whatever. On paper, it sounds good, but you need to think about, if you look at, take the euro for instance. Now, what is the base currency of the euro? The base currency of the euro is actually the Deutschmark, even though it doesn't exist, the German Deutschmark, because the German economy is the biggest within the eurozone, and it's essentially being devalued. But the ECB, which is the European Central Bank, is, even though it's difficult, they can get away with managing the euro because it's one region. So the central bank can more or less coordinate how it works, interest rates for those regions. In a BRICS sense, we are different. We're in different geographical regions. How is there going to be a proper coordination, in terms of those central banks? And then again, who's going to have the base currency? Is it going to be the Chinese yuan? Is it going to be the rand? If it's the Chinese yuan, remember that the problem with the Chinese yuan, it's not that the central bank operates independently. They operate at the whims of the Chinese Communist Party. So, and they're never going to, think twice about doing what's best for them. And how is that going to affect, our country? And as traders don't really put value in the yuan because it's not purely market controlled.
So are you saying if BRICS, if it were to start something, it would have to be based on something that is a currency that is existing, not something that is solely new?
I don't see a BRICS currency working. In short, that's what I'm saying. I think it's just. Yeah,
I was getting excited, about having our own currency and stuff, and also, that was, for me, it was interesting news, and I thought, okay, here is something new. But I think maybe when you come, we'll be able to talk more about, with regard to this, because as I was saying earlier on, we could spend the whole day talking about politics, and we'll never get to talk about many other things. But next time when you come, we'll be able to talk just on maybe one topic so that we get to learn more about, your knowledge with regard to all this, what you call the finance and the economics and many other things. The other thing that I want to talk about, because earlier on we spoke about investment. I believe that investment is vast, or investment is investment. Maybe you are able to break it down for an ordinary person when you talk about investment.
Sure. So there's different types of investments that you can get. But so what I do is investments mainly in equities. So in other words, companies, right? So and there's different types of styles of investments. There's what we call indexing, which is the idea that you have a whole bunch of companies and they are listed into one component. And so when you're buying that, you're buying little bits of all these companies that are in that thing. So for instance, in South Africa, we've got the JSE Top 40, right? So if you're buying the Top 40 index, you're buying a little bit of each company.
What's a little bit? Like maybe...
Yeah, it's different. Remember, so these indexes, there's two ways that an index can be structured. You get what we call market cap weighted, and equal indexes. Market cap means what happens is that in that index, as money comes in, if a company becomes big, more money is going to go into that company as its share prices rise. So the higher the share price rises, the more money will go into a particular company.
So in return, you get dividends, or what do you get as an investor? I'm just trying to get, as a layman, trying to get a better understanding.
Sure. So again, like I said, there's what we call market cap weighted indexes and equal weighted indexes. So in a market cap weighted index, as the share price of a company rises, the managers will put more money into that share, right? And so if it's like top 40 from number 1, which is I think now Naspers, which is the biggest company in South Africa, they would put more money in that, and then like each the other companies will have money according to their percentages within that index, right? And that's called market cap weighted. Equal cap weighted would mean that as you get money, they would look at they would try to keep it equal. So if a share price would suddenly rise, whichever ones would be less than, they would put money in those ones and not put in the one that's rising. Because the idea is that as it rises, it becomes more expensive. So why would you want to buy something that's becoming expensive?
Guys, I don't know. Maybe just to explain to someone out there if they want to do whatever that you are doing. Because hey, I want double.
Okay, sorry. Look, I would say
maybe let's say you trying to rope someone in to come and do whatever that you are doing into investment. What is the first step that one has to take to reach the level that
so
you are at now?
So look, it's, obviously you always want to get a financial advisor to help you with these things, right? So I would say, especially when you come to your retirement type of funds, you want to get a financial advisor to help you. But let's say you want to, build a little nest egg for yourself, but you don't have time to be, following the market or whatever. I would say the best one is get an index fund and put money in that. I have a preference for offshore index funds. So, for example, there is Satrix Global. It's a list of companies that are, all not in South Africa or overseas, but it's a list of them. But you can buy them all as one unit. The Satrix.
You buy or you put in money.
You buy the share.
You buy the shares.
Yeah, you put in the money, but you actually buy the share. So there's the likes of Satrix Global. There's the F&B Global 1,200. So for example, with the F&B Global 1,200, you're having the S&P 500, which is America's broad index fund, top 500 companies in the United States. So you'd be buying that. You'd be buying Japan's Tokyo 100. So a whole bunch of, a list would be in this F&B 1,200. So those are the ones that I would recommend. And the reason being that over the years, we've seen the value of the rand decline. I think on average, I'd read in one book that the rand has been declining at an average of 60% against the dollar over the last 10 years. Right. So if you want to protect your money, then I'd say it's a nice thing just to put it in this. If you don't want the hassle of actually sitting down, looking at financial statements, analyzing and whatever, and you just want to put money, go on with your life, just put it in one of these global index funds.
But what are some of the risks that one maybe might face, especially if you decide to, let me just put my money there, because I don't have time to be going through all this, analysis and the market and inflation and many other things that affect the outcome of the investment in general.
So brilliant question on risk. Excellent question. So there's a lot of fluctuation that will happen throughout. So generally, if you put in money there, I wouldn't say put money that you need in a year's time, right? Because you might want it and then it's like down and then you might have thing or whatever, right? I'd say think about 5 years at least. More you want to keep it longer, but think about a 5-year period at least, right? And so throughout that period, you'll see quite several fluctuations throughout that period. But over the 5 years, I can confidently tell you that steadily it actually rises you have a better return. So then it doesn't matter that the fact that it fluctuates. But again, back to what you were saying, the risk, from the risk element, because you're having so many companies that you're putting in. The risk of all these companies.
I can imagine maybe you just started investing and then COVID comes in, and
so now it goes down. And I'll show you an example. I had been investing for some time. When COVID happened, there was some huge so I had two portfolios at that time. There was a South African portfolio and there was the broad index portfolio. I think my South African portfolio was down by, I think at the worst time it was something between 54 to 60%. That's how bad it was, the South African portfolio. But the broad index, the global index, I put in the global FNB 1200. At its worst, it was only down by I think 15%, right, during COVID. Now the reason for that was that obviously a lot of those companies are offshore, so the money gets converted into dollars, and you buy those companies. And as when they went down, the rand also was going down. So I had that cushion, So it does fluctuate, but like I say, if you're putting it off, depending on your view on South Africa, if you're optimistic, you can keep it here. Like we've talked about the politics.
Like Rob Herzog,
yes.
He always comes back and say, no, but I'm investing in this country, but he always complains. But in the back of my mind, it's like, okay, but it means there's potential here.
Yes.
But maybe I don't want to say he's angry, but there's something that he's unhappy about. But he sees for more and more. There's gold and there's something. So
that's what type of citizens we need to be. Like we need to be involved with the issues of our countries. If you're unhappy, let's put it in. Let's put it out there. But yes, let's keep on investing. But I mean, yes.
Someone probably out there watching is like, these guys are talking about investment, and I remember watching. There is this controversial guy. He got banned. Andrew Tate. I don't know if you know him. And in one of his videos, he's like, you can never be rich by investing and stuff like that. It's like, okay, now here you are telling me about investing and so forth. Is it a way of getting rich, or is it a way of trying to, maybe you can just try to elaborate on that when you do invest, what will be the primary goal, or maybe the long-term goal for someone to invest, or encouraging someone to get into investing?
So I think the process of wealth, there's different processes of just going to wealth. And I want to be wary of saying to people, don't do this, or investing is the only way of doing it. I know myself. The idea of getting down, starting a business, and actually, that's not me, right? I enjoy the whole idea of, like I said, I have a consulting background, so I do enjoy the idea of coming to someone else's business and doing analysis and stuff. But myself getting down and doing it, that's not.
And sometimes when you analyze it, it's make you think you have a better. Well, you do have. It's just that when you don't get to enjoy the difficulty that it comes with trying to build. But from a distance, you're able to tell, no, this one, it's gonna skyrocket, things like that.
So just on that. So there's a group on Facebook that I've joined, and it's a Peter Thiel group, and Peter Thiel is one famous investor. Guys that one of the early funders of Facebook, started PayPal and so forth. Part of the PayPal mafia. But there's a group, and we have a bunch of us that comment on stuff that he's done or stuff that he's put, and I've actually made friends there. Like there's a guy that's Danish and a guy that's American, and we started chatting. And these guys wanted me to be part of us starting a company, right? But I know myself. As much as I admire what Peter Thiel and the likes of Peter Thiel and Elon Musk, Matt Slevkin achieved, I don't want to work an 80-hour day, an 80-hour weekend, or not sleeping for 3 days because I'm working on a business. That's not me. Like that video says, I came here to enjoy life. I didn't come here to suffer.
Which
But-
is wasted, man.
Yeah, Papa, I gave you your life. No suffer.
One of those South African videos, yeah.
I've left.
Yeah. So,
It's a maybe.
It's a
Maybe.
Oh, it's a meme.
Like maybe
Oh.
background, or I keep it to enjoy life, not to suffer.
so I know that I want to, but only invest what you're saying. You can build wealth in investment, but you got to be extremely patient. Right? You're not gonna. I see these things of people trading, claiming how you can make money overnight. That stuff. I'm very skeptical of these things. The whole building wealth through investments, it's about taking time, and the more you put in, the more you get out, right? But again, it's all about patience.
So in the midst of it, whilst you are patient, trying to put in some growth into investment and do you is that why you I don't want to say consider, but I know that you are a minimalist.
Yes.
Yeah. Is that part of the reason why maybe because everything doesn't just blossom when it takes time.
No, fair enough. So, I'll reflect a bit on my personal life when we come to minimalism. So my father was a principal, right? And my mother is
Apparently, before we started, Barry, you own a TV and OT. Maybe try to tell us about that story. Because I was fascinated. And OT, this guy doesn't even have a plasma or something. Like that was so odd.
I do have an old TV. I mean, for me, plasma.
Maybe try to describe the TV that you guys are talking about.
It's one of those Samsung old TVs, the big screen, big back,
So how about who trades it?
How many? How many G's?
I don't know.
So 15.
50.
They are 10.
Oh, 50
It's not that small. It's a bit more medium than that.
But it can be 17 if I give.
No, but the screen is big enough.
Why though? Maybe well, we are laughing, but
No.
someone might be interested for it. Okay, I just want to know why.
Why?
Yeah.
It works.
I mean, with this guy who is so knowledgeable and intelligent, and they're still using old things and trying to keep it in the minimalism stream or line or lifestyle.
Yeah. So it works. My TV works. I don't have DSTV. I use Starset.
I don't have.
I use Starset instead.
Starset.
Starset is the cheaper.
Yeah, ETV. Or good.
Yeah.
Yeah, ETV. You're on ETV.
No.
There's this other channel.
Starset
Thing. I know the channel. Oh, hey, not this other.
Yeah. But why did I buy it? Because it's got Bloomberg. I get Bloomberg for cheaper, which Bloomberg gives you information. It's a leading market reporter channel on businesses, right? But I get Bloomberg at a cheaper rate than I would on DSTV. If I needed to get Bloomberg on DSTV, I'd have to pay more. So
is it the fact that we are being a minimalist, you have to, there are certain things that you just don't want to focus on, but knowing very well, no, I can still afford this, but I prefer to stick on this, even though it's not the. I want to use. It's not the in thing.
Yeah. So like I was saying to you, my thing is, there's some. Now I know we'll talk about this later with books, but one of the influences on my life is this idea of stoicism, right? And the idea of stoicism is you want to have a very simplified life, very simple life. And when you go back to stoicism, there's not much you actually need. People think that you need a lot of material to be happy.
But my problem is that how do you get to socialize? Because you know, everything that we are exposed to, it's through these platforms that we are talking about. Your my DSTV, your my, you know, my Netflix and many other.
But I have Netflix, 99 rand one.
But that's the most common one.
But yeah. But what I was saying there is that with stoicism, you know, the idea is that you don't need a.
What's that?
Stoicism.
Stoicism. What's that?
Yes. So it's the idea of just leading a very simplified life, right? You want to eliminate complexity within your life. You just want as simple, as honest, as pure as it can be. It's not boring. Like, it's definitely not boring. My idea is this. The idea is this. People think that by getting one of the lies that we've believed in modern society is that by having more things you become more happier. And I'm saying that's not the truth. That's not true. There's the stuff that you may need in your life, and once you have a certain amount of stuff, beyond that, it doesn't really make any difference to your level of happiness.
What do you think, maybe, are some of those things that you have and you feel, Jorge, some other people, they need to have, and they need to stop pressurizing themselves into wanting things that will not benefit them?
Sure. So how I look at it is that in your life, you don't need to have everything, right? Everything of the latest and stuff. You just need to have like 2 or 3 things that you're really happy about, that really truly make you happy, right? And as long as you have those things, you enjoy life. So I like going out to restaurants, right? So every month I'll go out once, twice, you know, depending on whatever I feel like. I'll go to, there's a coffee shop I love in Costa, and I'll go there, and I'll typically also buy.
Costa is white-dominated town, so
no, I wouldn't say
that's why I coffee shop, and that coffee shop, and that's why he goes to a coffee shop. I'm just.
No, it's not white-dominated. If it was white,
Costa is Swaterhands. Oh, which one is white-dominated? Swaterhands.
No. Look. If these places were white dominated, then the ANC wouldn't have won as many seats.
Let's not go to politics.
No. But that's my point. But yes, the Afrikaner towns, so they have large, a fair population of Afrikaners English speaking. But in the dorpies, right? Not in the towns.
Because majority of the population there is black people anyway.
Yeah. But my point is there's a coffee shop there that I love. So what are the things that I need to like make me happy, right? Like I say, going out for that coffee shop, getting a really good book, right?
We'll get to that.
Yeah, so really getting a really good book. So if I'm reading a good book that's really engaging, having coffee, having a good discussion. Those are about like the 3 things that I really need to make me happy.
So clearly you've got your own things.
Yeah. I don't need flashy cars.
You need a wife, or you need to go to church. He has his own. So each one. Each one. Eh?
I don't know how that's
each one. Each for each. Yeah?
I don't know.
Something like each for each, something like this. Yeah, well, something for someone.
But basically, we all have different things that make us happy or make us feel fulfilled in life. Yes.
Yeah. No, that's interesting. So, I mean. Okay.
Ich in der Batterie.